Is right now speaking in Taiwan. Let's go across.
I believe it is no exaggeration to say that if this virus had emerged in a place like Taiwan or the United States, it might have been snuffed out easily, rapidly reported to public health authorities who would have shared what they knew with health professionals and with the general public. Instead, Beijing appears to have resisted information sharing, muzzling doctors who spoke out, and hobbling the world's ability to respond. I can attest to this personally. The same week the virus was finally reported, and before any cases had been confirmed outside China, U.S. CDC Director Robert Redfield spoke frequently with his counterpart in the PRC about the outbreak. He repeatedly offered CDC's assistance to the PRC to understand the disease and to assist in response efforts. Yet, it took until mid-February, weeks after the virus had spread well beyond China's borders, for Beijing to admit a team of international experts to assist with the investigation, while claiming that the U.S. had been doing nothing to help. Taiwan presents a strong counterpoint. Your slogans for foreign assistance during COVID-19 have been, Taiwan can help and Taiwan is helping. Sadly, for political reasons, some don't want Taiwan to help, even when it costs lives. That is the unmistakable message from Beijing in the way it has recently dealt with the World Health Organization. From 2008 through 2016, Taiwan was able to participate in the World Health Assembly, the annual meeting of the WHO, as an observer. But in 2016, as all of you know, Taiwan held free and fair elections, leading to the inauguration of President Tsai. The following year, because of that political development, Beijing changed its tune on who ought to be part of a public health conversation. Taiwan was not invited as an observer to the 2017 WHA, and it has not been invited since, even in the midst of a global pandemic with so many lives at stake. Representing the United States, I have spoken out against this decision at each WHA that I have attended. This spring, we issued our first joint statement with Taiwan on the issue, highlighting how much more illogical and counterproductive this decision has become during a global pandemic. This behavior is in keeping with Beijing's approach to the WHO and other international organizations. The influence of the PRC far outweighs its investment in this public health institution, and it uses influence not to advance public health objectives, but its own narrow political interests. Since the outbreak of COVID-19, for instance, Beijing has lobbied against the investigations and reforms desperately needed to make the WHO a more effective institution. Taiwan's exclusion from the WHO is especially puzzling when its contributions to global health began long before the COVID-19 pandemic. The United States and Taiwan have both been strong advocates of global health security and the international health regulations. An essential piece of this work is engaging in a joint external evaluation to assess public health capabilities. Taiwan became the 8th jurisdiction to publish results from its joint external evaluation in 2016 by engaging the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security as its evaluator. This is a remarkable and meaningful commitment on Taiwan's behalf and helps to cement Taiwan's status as one of the world's leaders on global health security. I want to recognize the work of Professor Chen in making this assessment possible. The Indo-Pacific region and the whole world are safer because of Taiwan's commitment to this public health work. At other times, Taiwan has offered to make contributions to global health, only to have been rebuffed. In the spring of 2018, for instance, the World Health Organization put out an urgent call for funding to respond to an Ebola outbreak in the Western Democratic Republic of the Congo. Taiwan offered $1 million for this important fight, but the political bullying over Taiwan's status at the WHO ended up making this donation impossible. Taiwan's global health efforts have continued during the pandemic. That includes engaging with experts from my department and the health departments of Japan and Australia to strategize on the COVID-19 response through our joint global cooperation and training framework, which celebrates its 5th anniversary this year. The U.S., CDC, and Taiwan enjoyed an extraordinarily close relationship, working for over 15 years in areas as diverse as influenza chronic diseases, injury prevention, healthcare infection prevention and control, vaccine confidence, and foodborne illness. We worked especially closely with Taiwan during the 2003 SARS outbreak. The world has now experienced 2 serious viruses that have emerged from China in the past 2 decades, SARS and COVID-19. The issue is not which country is the source. The issue is how that country responds. There is very little about diplomacy that is simple. But when it comes to health, the expectations of the world community are quite common sense. You can't get anywhere without transparency. How can the world possibly work together to prevent, contain, and combat viruses unless we're willing to share information about these threats with each other? How could a doctor cure a patient without the patient disclosing his symptoms? How could doctors ever learn to treat a virus unless other doctors can honestly share their experiences? We have had successful cooperation and engagement with the PRC on a few issues, including on some areas in health. But on the most important health challenge of this century, genuine cooperation was lacking. I'm so pleased to be here today to thank Taiwan for setting a positive example and for choosing enthusiastically to be a part of the global health community. Your contributions have never been more appreciated than they are today. In these trying times, the United States knows that we will always have a friend in Taiwan, and we will not shy away from telling the rest of the world that they can rely on Taiwan too. Thank you all for inviting me here today, and thank you for your warm welcome to Taiwan. Thank you.
Well, that was U.S. Health Secretary Alex Azar speaking in Taiwan. Moving on now, let's take